and talk about, Jim, your experience of researching Rothko and how that research led to some of the design choices that you made for the production.
It's kind of a rare thing for a scenic designer to actually get to research a real person. You know, usually the characters are the product of the playwright's imagination. So I get to research about a painter who I loved, you know, and a whole period of art that I found absolutely fascinating, and got fairly obsessed with, you know, finding all these little pictures of his studios and him working, and him with all the other New York painters at the time. It was a great picture. And then trying to imagine what this world is, because, I mean, this isn't a real moment that we see on stage. It's a reference to a time, you know. It's so it's not intended to be a real space, but we want something to hang all these ideas in this space on and everything. So I actually stole a bunch of things that he had done to his studios to create this studio space. So, for instance, this center wall here, these three little panels with the panel up above, in his studio that he had in the 1950s, which is where these murals were painted, he had carpenters come in and build walls in front of the wall. And this was the first YMCA gymnasium in New York City, and later became his studio, and then much later became the bunker that William S. Burroughs wrote in. So it has quite an interesting pedigree there. Yeah, but he used these walls and he had this ingenious little hook system with pulleys, so he could put these hooks on the back of his canvases and pull them up into the air so he could take a look at it. Larissa and I talked a lot about his pentimento idea where there are layers and layers of things. So I really like the idea of there being layers of walls. So there's this wall, and there's another wall that might have been from maybe an earlier part of his life or a different series of paintings or something like that. And then beyond that is another wall, which is never really lit, but it's just meant to give us sort of a feeling. So you're only supposed to feel it. Then on the floor, you know, we wanted to create these little spaces that I call workspaces. They're not really workspaces. And they really come from the earlier studio. There was this great detail in the floor where they had replaced part of the wood floor with masonite because it had rotted through, I think. But it made this great pattern in the floor, which is something that I grabbed onto. So it's, and the thing that really fascinated me in looking at all these different photos is, here's this guy, and he's not doing bad, right? You know, I mean, he's getting about 10 grand for a painting in the early 60s, probably. And I read a deal that said at the time of his suicide, they found 798 completed paintings stacked in his studio. So
you have a storage unit as well.
You know, I mean, so he's not doing that, but he had, in all of these photographs that I found, were these awful pieces of furniture that he clearly must have grabbed off the street and dragged into his studio. And in fact, this cabinet that we reproduced is sort of like if there's a drawer missing, it's covered with paint, and it's in all three of his studios, all three of the different studios. So not only did he drag it off the street and use it, but he moved it across town twice. Same thing with this bench that we recreated, you know, and these awful chairs. In fact, in two of the pictures, there's the same chair, and it's missing the seat.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I found a bunch of those things to be really fascinating about him and the space and this relationship of him to his work. I love all of the talk about art that, you know, I mean, the character of Kim is really